Do you need to max out your RSP? Unfortunately, I filmed this whole video last week, and then Tanya was looking at it and she's like, your face is blurry, you look like an idiot, I can't put that out there, and now I have to film it again, which is super annoying. Now after you've watched it or during watching it, please subscribe if you haven't. We're almost about to start, actually filming Financial Planning 101. I'm just writing it right now, basically from beginning to end, teaching everything you need to know without any of my stupid opinions in the middle. But let's talk about this. Before I even wrote this out or did the math, I knew the answer to this question, which is no, you don't need to max out your RSP, but let me prove it to you anyways. So first we need to know, how much RSP room do we actually generate? So you generate RSP room based on your income from work. So if you made $100,000, you're going to get 18% of your income in RSP room. So 100,000 times 18% is $18,000. So that's your RSP room. Now if you don't use that RSP room in a given year, then it gets added to your RSP room next year. So if you haven't used your RSP room in previous years, there are some people with hundreds of thousands of dollars in RSP room that they're just never going to catch up on. Now there is also a limit on how much that's going to happen. That goes up every year with inflation. So they're saying, you know what, if you make $1 million a year, we're not going to give you $180,000 worth of RSP room. We're going to max it out, and generally it's maxed out around $25,000, but this year it's $27,230 is the max you could generate in the year, which means if you make $151,278, you've generated the maximum RSP room, and you can't put any more in unless you have room from previous years. That makes sense? Clear as mud? Now let's get into an example, and I'm going to talk about somebody that is 30 years old, gets a job for $100,000 a year, because we know that I like round numbers, and he never worked a day in his life before he was 30 years old for some reason. Whatever, he was like, I don't know what he was doing, playing video games and blogging or doing comedy probably. So he never made any money, and he gets a good job, and he decides that he's going to put $18,000 a year into his RSP until he's 65 years old, and that's when he's going to retire. And to make this easy, I'm going to pretend that inflation doesn't exist until he retires, because otherwise the math is going to get weird and I might lose people. So basically he's just going to do this from 30 to 65 years old. He's going to invest in his RSP, and he's going to get a 5% rate of return. Could get more, could get less. We'll go with 5, easy number. He does that, and at the end, at 65 years old, he has $1,704,000, I believe, in his RSP at 65 years old. So now let's really look at this guy and say, okay, well, how much money did he have when he was working, and how much money is he going to need in retirement? Because this is a really good question. It's like, okay, so this guy, let's say he was making about $6,000 a month after tax, and in order to save and max out his RSP at $18,000, he had to put in $1,500 a month. So now he's got $4,500. Let's say his mortgage payment is another $1,500, so he's left with $3,000 of money to spend and live every month for the rest of his life. Now, to be fair, he's also going to get a tax refund of about $6,000 a year. So he's got an extra cash in his pocket of $500 a month. So now we're talking about a guy that if he wants to live the exact same lifestyle in retirement that he did when he's working, he needs $3,500 a month in retirement, until however long he lives. Because now he no longer has to put $1,500 into his RSP, and he doesn't have a mortgage payment anymore. So, you know, that's where that money, he doesn't need that. And now let's look at this guy, because he's also going to get CPP and old age security. And I'm going to pretend that CPP enhancement doesn't exist, but in the real world, this guy would actually need even less. He would get paid even more than this with CPP if he's like a guy from today. But in this case, this guy would get about 85% of CPP because he didn't work until he was 30 years old, and he'd get 100% of old age security at age 65. So he's going to get, what is he going to get? $1,819 a month from CPP and OAS, and he needs $4,250 a month before tax to get to that magic $3,500 a month number. So he needs to generate $2,431 per month out of his RSP in order to be able to live the exact same lifestyle. Now I sure hope to hell that this guy can make it work with $1.7 million in his RSP to generate $2,400 a month in income. So now what I have to do is I have to say, well, we do have to take out more every year for inflation. And I'm going to say that he's also reducing the risk in his portfolio when he retires. So now we'll call it that he's going to get a 4% rate of return, and inflation is 2%. So his real rate of return is going to be 2% on his $1.7 million RSP. So do you think that's going to last? Well, I decided to run the numbers, and it turns out that if he's pulling out that $2,431 a month indexed to inflation, he will never ever, under any circumstances, run out of money. He's got way too much money in his RSP, and if he does this at age 90, passes away, turns out he'll have $1.863 million in his RSP. So now let's look and say, well, what if he just wanted to blow it all and live the high life until he was 90 years old? This guy could actually pull out $7,222 a month indexed to inflation out of his RSP until he was 90 years old, at which point he'd have $0 left in his RSP, but he would still have CPP and OAS. So no, he did not even have to close to max out his RSP. This guy would be totally fine without doing that. So now you ask, how much money does this guy potentially need to retire based on this lifestyle need? So we need to work backwards. And we say, okay, well, he wants whatever that is, that $2,431 a month indexed to inflation out of his RSP from age 65. And he has from age 30 to 65 to save that amount of money. So we're looking at this guy and we're saying, well, he's actually going to need $573,000 in his RSP to be able to achieve that. Now you're also running the risk, if you're trying to go dead nuts on this and say, okay, well, what if you get a lower rate of return or you live longer? Well, you could potentially run out of money. So getting just dead nuts on the number isn't exactly what you want to shoot for, but it is why I would prefer to suggest that you're going to get lower rates of return than what history shows that you would get, in order to be ahead of the game, rather than me telling people, guess what, you're going to get 8% and that's absolutely fantastic, and then you look in 30 years and you're like, we only got 5.5 and now I'm totally fucked. So you don't really want that. So anyways, if you're looking at this guy, he wants to get to that $573,000 a month from 30, then he needs to save $506 a month. Now keep in mind that if he's only saving $506 a month, now his lifestyle, he's used to spending an extra $1,000 a month. So maybe that's not totally fair in this case scenario. Maybe he needs to save a little bit more, but then we can always go back to what I have always suggested is my favorite retirement plan for people that are like salaried employees that have a job that should be using RSPs as their primary saving vehicle for their retirement. You do that, then you get your tax refund in April, and instead of spending it, you put that directly into your tax-free savings account, and you should legitimately be golden. Now don't take all of that money and put it into GameStop or Bitcoin or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying don't diversify out of just regular investments that your banker or financial advisor is saying, but also to keep in mind that you shouldn't be putting all of your eggs in one basket. And that's the reason why we say what we say. Because when you get a portfolio built at the bank or by an advisor or by a robo-advisor or whatever, they're going to be diverse and well built. And you're probably not going to be able to well build a portfolio unless you're doing your own research, which most people don't do. They just say, I did my research because I talked to my friend and he said this. That isn't research. So anyways, thank you very much for watching. Please keep a lookout for what we're up to next, I guess. I keep talking about this and then I don't do it, so I will do it soon. And thanks for watching. Sorry for getting weird last week, but hopefully shit doesn't hit the fan, but if it does, then hopefully we're ready and we'll get through it together. Talk to you soon. Bye.